Sunday night, determined to go to school. And he said, I'm going to school, are you proud of me? And I said, I am, love. And I led him out and he said, I love you, Mum. Shut the door behind me. And he didn't even make dinner time. I'm on phone, police car just came up front and said, you need to come, you need to come. And as Sophie and Mark walked in, I picked my phone up and someone put R.I.P. Harvey.
He left for school just like any other day, a simple, ordinary Monday morning, a day that began with a mother's pride and a son's simple question. Before he walked out the door, he turned to his mother, shut the door behind him, and said, I love you, Mom. Those words would be the final ones she would ever hear her son speak. Earlier that morning, as he got ready for All Saints Catholic High School in Sheffield, he had asked a question every parent longed to hear, a question that speaks to the very core of a child's desire for validation. Are you proud of me? He had asked. I am, love, was his mother's reply. For a year, he had struggled with school, battling anxiety, and more recently, the fear of weapons on school grounds. He had messaged his father the Friday before, I am not going to that school while people have knives.
Well, on that Wednesday, there was a lockdown, and Harvey didn't go to school that day. And I went into his bedroom and I said, your school's on lockdown? And he said, yeah, because someone's got a weapon. And he sent Mark a message on his phone, I think it was 11:05 or something, and it said, Dad, this is why I don't go to school, because people carry knives.
But on February 3rd, 2020, he found the courage to return. He would be dead within hours. This is Grim Vault, where we don't just revisit cases, we reopen them. Today we're diving into a case that exposes the dark underbelly of a high school rivalry, where a seemingly minor dispute escalated into a fatal act of violence. This is the story of Harvey Willgoose, and how a quiet boy's life was cut short by a schoolmate with a hidden knife. The day he went back to school, his 15-year-old schoolmate was also preparing for the day. He went online, searching for a prayer to keep him safe, a prayer to justify the hunting knife he was about to tuck into his coat pocket. He later told the jury it was a scary knife that he carried only for protection, believing its presence would scare off anyone who dared to challenge him. This is a common and often fatal miscalculation in the psychology of young offenders. The weapon, intended as a shield, quickly becomes a tool for aggression, an extension of the bravado that so often masks deep insecurity. The two boys were in separate social circles, but had been on good terms until a fight broke out between their friends the previous week. That argument spilled onto social media, a relentless storm of teenage bravado and threats. For legal reasons, we can't say the defendant's name. In the early hours of a Saturday morning, Harvey, a boy who loved his friends like family, posted his address online, tagging the defendant's friend. If you've got a problem with any of my friends, he wrote, you've got my Addy. I'll deal with it. Simple, but before school on Monday, he tried to clear the air, messaging the defendant directly, asking if there was beef between them. The defendant's response was a chilling mix of aggression and regret. Nah, but if you want beef, we can have it. But then his tone changed. He reminded Harvey that he had been his first friend at the school, a glimmer of a different path, a path he chose not to take. The morning started innocently enough. Around 9:15 a.m., Harvey walked past the defendant, who was sitting in an empty school corridor. Harvey, with a playful spirit, pointed at him and called him a name in jest. They sparred, a series of light-hearted pushes and jabs, a classic teenage game of one-upmanship. It was a normal morning, a typical day. A handshake at the end, a shared moment of friendly tension released. For a brief moment, the defendant later told the jury he thought they were all right. He went back to the account he had been asked to write about the previous week's fight, the one he had been physically restrained from getting involved in. Soon after, Harvey ran into his head of Year 10, Claire Staniforth. He told her he hadn't planned on attending because he had heard there were knives. I said I wouldn't have been in work if someone had a knife, Ms. Staniforth told the jury. In a mock show of toughness, Harvey held his hands up and added, as if anyone's going to stab me. It was a statement of faith in his own invincibility, a faith that was about to be shattered. Later, in a narrow school corridor during morning break, The two boys met again. The crowded hallway, a microcosm of the school's social dynamics, became the stage for their next confrontation. They pushed into each other again. The defendant would later claim in court that Harvey had threatened to jog or stab him. But when the defendant went to Ms. Staniforth's office just 15 minutes later, asking to be excused from his science lesson to avoid two other students, he said nothing about the alleged threat. He had already been allowed to miss PE to avoid the boy he claimed had brought the knife the week before, so he was told to attend class as normal. The stage was set. The victim arrived at his science class late, but in a good mood, as teacher Sophie Heathwhite recalled. They joked about her arm being in a sling, with Harvey, ever the class clown, quipping that she'd been in a fight. The mood shifted the moment the defendant walked in. Harvey asked for a timeout. As the boys crossed paths, the space between the desks suddenly became a battleground. They squared up, baiting each other. The defendant later admitted he was trying to get Harvey to lose his cool, believing that if he hit him first, he'd have a reason to hit him back. But he also insisted he had worded it out wrong, that he didn't really want to hit Harvey. The defendant, the jury heard, had his own history of pain, of being bullied, of physical and emotional abuse at home. He seemed quiet and sad after the encounter. He stayed in the lesson, his coat still on, the knife still hidden in his pocket. Harvey, seeking peace, went to the isolation room for some quiet time. At 12:05 p.m., just 5 minutes before lunch, he called Ms. Staniforth from the room. "Hi, bestie," he said, a term of endearment he often used for her. She offered him a safe place to eat lunch, her office. He said he'd be there. He never arrived. The defendant, meanwhile, was talking to a friend. He suddenly mentioned the knife. His friend, with a gut feeling of dread, told him, "Give it to me before you do something stupid," but the defendant didn't listen. The stage was now set for the final tragic act. Harvey told a pupil that the defendant had motioned taking something from his pocket in science class, but he had thought he was bluffing. He wouldn't be bluffing now. At 12:15 p.m., in the school courtyard, the two boys met for the last time. The defendant claimed Harvey had threatened him and put his hand on his arm. Believing he was about to be stabbed, the defendant pulled the black 13-centimeter blade from his pocket. He later claimed his memory failed him at this point. But the CCTV footage played in court showed a different story. It showed him moving the knife to his right hand and stabbing Harvey twice, once in the chest and once in the abdomen, with such force that it severed one of his ribs. For 49 seconds, Harvey remained standing, the shock of the fatal injury holding him upright. He backed away, then, in a moment of disbelief, moved back towards his attacker. The knife-wielding teenager advanced, shouting, "Come on! What now?" Witnesses screamed and fled. A girl grabbed a younger student and ran, shouting, "He's got a knife! He's just stabbed somebody!" Harvey leaned into the nearby cafeteria, looked at his attacker one last time, and then stepped back into the courtyard. He looked down at his chest and collapsed. For a moment, he lay there alone. Miss Staniforth, hearing the screams, ran to him. "I told him I was there," she said, her voice breaking. Another teacher, Morgan Davis, ran toward the commotion, toward the culprit. He looked at the defendant, who seemed scared and in shock. The boy just kept repeating, "You know I can't control it." He didn't resist as the teacher took the knife from him. The ambulance was called at 12:17 GMT. 7 long minutes, an eternity, passed before paramedics arrived. The defendant was escorted to the head teacher's office where he was arrested. "I stabbed him," he confessed. "I'm not right in the head. My mom doesn't look after me right." Harvey was rushed to Sheffield Children's Hospital. His mother and a police officer were on the way when a voice on the walkie-talkie said, "Turn the blue lights off. Go at normal speed." The message was clear. There was no hope. She arrived to find a post online. "R.I.P. Harvey. We were told he had passed away," she recalled. "I just started screaming." Harvey was pronounced dead at 1:24 p.m. His killer had ruined his life. And he was gone. The trial ended with a guilty verdict for murder. The defendant's plea of manslaughter, of a loss of control, was rejected by the jury. They saw the premeditated actions, the online searches, the hidden knife, the escalating confrontations. Harvey's mother spoke of a house that was once always full of life, of kids, of laughter. He liked to be at home, so our house was always full of kids, she said. Now it's quiet.
Devastation. Our lives are ruined. Ruined. Our life's never going to be the same again. What we're going through is just, there's no words for it. It's like I've said before, when I hear Mark crying and that, it's harrowing. It's horrible. I have to take myself away and shut the door.
One of his friends, who had known him since they were 6, said he thought about him daily. He weren't a friend, he was more family, he said. The boy who was so loved by his friends, a boy who would be there for them no matter what, was gone. The defendant's actions ruined his own life and the life of his victim. Now, 2 families are left with an empty bedroom. There are no winners here, his mother said. The only sound left is the ringing of a bell and the silence of a house where a son once lived.
To be honest, because like I've said before, there's been no winners in this. That's another thing that they need to know about carrying knives. Nobody's won here. His parents have got an empty bed. He's ruined his life. He's got this to live with for the rest of his life. There ain't no winners in carrying knives.
The story serves as a chilling reminder of how a simple argument, fueled by teenage bravado and fear, can spiral into a tragedy that leaves a permanent mark on a community, a school, and 2 families forever changed. If this story has resonated with you, consider exploring more of our content. Click the subscribe button and hit the bell icon to get notified every time we reopen a case. Also, please drop a comment below and share your thoughts on this heartbreaking story.